Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Relationship Master Series. Principles to a Passionate Life in Relationship and Dynamite Families. I'm Alan Darbon, and I'll be your host for this series. And I've had a fun time inviting over 25 wonderful experts from all over the world, many different planets. In fact, today our expert comes to us from Ibiza, Spain, a beautiful spot on this planet. And they're coming to us from all over. They're going to share their hearts and share their information and experience to help us all find those wonderful relationships and dynamite families that we all deserve and look forward to. And today, I'm very delighted to have on the program, as I mentioned, from Ibiza, Diana Beaulieu. And Diana is an intuitive coach, a teacher, a healer, and a storyteller. She helps women and men heal deeply and empower themselves in their relationships and harness their authentic, spiritual, intuitive, and creative power. She is a graduate of Oxford University with a background in anthropology, neuroimmunology, shamanism, and energy medicine. A great combination. And she likes to study and help people understand their energetic patterns that are expressed through their traumas, their emotional patterns, and come out in relationship issues. She's the founder of Sacred Women Awakening. This is a learning and a healing program for women who wish to recover their divine feminine connection through the energy of their womb in a real, tangible, and experiential way. So I'm excited to get into this with Diana. And I want to tell you that she has offered to give you a wonderful free gift, and we will announce that at the very end of the program, so stay tuned to the end. And I'll also tell you at that moment just how to get the link to be able to have access to that program. So once again, Diana, welcome. I'm very happy to have you on the program. And thank you for being available at this time. I know we're on a very different time zone.
Thank you so much, Alan. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here with you on the summit.
So I'd like to jump right in and with the question that a lot of our viewing audience is always interested in. It's how did you get into this whole field of focusing on individuals and relationship and energy and that whole thing? Tell us about that.
Well, actually, Alan, interestingly, my whole healing journey started with a relationship crisis. Sure, I'm not alone there.
Right.
But I had a relationship with a man, and I was quite young. I was in my early 20s, actually. And I had a relationship which, on all levels of my being, seemed to take me to hell. And somehow something really broke down in me and put me into like a really dark night of my soul when this relationship ended. And actually, I went on this kind of quest to try and heal myself from this relationship, because there was something very magnetic about the energy between us, but I also felt it wasn't healthy. And when I walked away from that relationship, I knew I was doing the right thing, but it was as if a piece of my soul was being ripped out. We had such a deep connection, and I've never experienced that kind of depth of connection actually ever since. You know, if you could relate to a relationship to different planets, and the energy of planet was like Pluto, you know, absolute death and destruction and transformation that came from this encounter, this relationship. And that quest for healing, because I was on a very academic, intellectual path. I was a trained anthropologist. I was working with tribes. You know, my life projection was that I would spend the rest of my life as a traveling academic. And this relationship kind of tore down my intellectual defense layers and really took me into the pit of my emotions and the kind of lack of well-being I was actually experiencing. So I'd been harboring myself in my mind for many years, using the intellect as a way of operating in quite a disassociated way. And so this is what kind of forced me down into my emotions and into my body, and to address what was really happening in myself. And so I went on this quest, the hero's quest, to heal myself, and to actually disentangle from all of the really quite toxic effects of this relationship. I really wanted to heal, and it took many years, actually. And even today, I still find facets of that relationship popping up to be cleared, because this person was a huge gift, one of my greatest teachers, obviously. And so as I went on that journey, first I encountered shiatsu, which is a form of body work, and it's based in Chinese energy medicine, but it's a Japanese form of that. It's a kind of evolution of Chinese energy medicine as expressed through the meridians in the body, so very physical, and at the same time very related to how we experience emotions in our body, how we encode them through the body, and how we need to address emotional imprints in the body in order to come into health and balance and flow. And after about 7-8 years of that road, I realized I still wasn't any closer to healing that old relationship. I'd done a lot of fantastic things, but there was still something going on. And this is where I started discovering shamanic work. So when I talk about shamanic work, I'm referring to quite fundamental core shamanic work, where you use the rhythm of a drum to alter your brainwaves and go in very much into what you might call your unconscious. Okay, so you're going into the caves of your unconscious, and there you're developing a capacity to see what's happening in your life on a whole different level, through the language of energy. And I started to learn through doing this work. I started to learn quite systematically what was happening in my energy fields in this relationship that I was trying to heal, where I was entangled, where I was kind of vampirically connected to this person. Where there were very blurry boundaries, where there were kind of energy attacks going on, etc., etc. And I started it was quite a scientific process, actually, because, I really took this on board as just another vision of the reality I was experiencing. And I found it very direct and empowering. So understanding, okay, the reason why I can't let go of this relationship is because my personal energy is completely invested in the energy field of that person. There's something in my energy that I couldn't access before, that what hasn't been here, it's been over there since I met this person, right? And so how do I bring it back? And I was really learning these tools of empowerment on this very deep energetic level. And by energy, I don't even mean anything complicated. What I refer to is that think of our energy fields as a big bag of jelly, and when things are correctly aligned, we're just beautifully in our little bag of jelly, and we feel very contained, and boundaries are there, and self-identity is there. This is me, and that's you over there, etc. But when that bag of jelly moves out of shape and we start entangling with other people, that's when obsession and heartbreak and confusion, all these things can set in, all these things that were happening to me. So that, in a nutshell, is my journey through two different healing modalities that I use to heal myself, and which very much inform the intuitive work I do now. So the intuitive work I do now is it's kind of like a synthesis. It's kind of like it's me doing what I do intuitively, but with these two quite strong pillars of background, and these are very traditional forms of energy work.
Oh, wonderful. That's a very interesting journey. And I mean, one of the things that stands out to me right away, I mean, a lot of viewers often will kind of think about, well, Alan's collected a whole bunch of experts. He's an expert himself, and many years of work in relationships and everything. And he can't identify with my problems. The truth is, I mean, like you were saying, we are all, essentially everyone, drawn to this work because we've struggled, we've made errors. I can't say they're mistakes, because we've learned to look at them as opportunities, which is a big transformation in itself. And yet there's not one of us that haven't had our feet in the fire and actually stick them back in the fire on a very common basis. So we're all doing this together, folks. And so please know that our hearts are open to you, and we're sharing from a place of living there and being there with you. And Diane, I love your perspective. I mean, it's people talk about relationships and how, hanging on to old relationships and this kind of thing, but you're taking it to a whole other level in terms of how the energy actually gets connected in there, and that has to be paid attention to and worked with at an area that you can't get to through the intellect. So thank you for your own explanation and explanation about this. So, and going further with that, how do you see? Say a little more about how, in relationships, how they express themselves as these energetic patterns.
Mm. So let's talk about like an ideal healthy relationship first as a kind of starting
Great,
point.
great.
Right. I don't claim to be in an ideal relationship by any stretch, but sometimes it's
Ideal.
helpful to have this kind of template working towards, and that you realize is kind of possible, right? Because these templates can include really basic ideas that maybe we haven't considered. Because I think sometimes when we're working with anything like relationships, we're often so focused on the pathology that's happening, we forget to actually bring ourselves to a template of what's possible. And I like to do that quite a lot, whether it's with what is it to be a man, what is it to be a woman, what is it to be in a relationship, what is it to be in a relationship to yourself, to somebody else. Well, what does that look like when it's really harmonic and healthy?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, obviously, any relationship that's healthy starts with a healthy self-relationship on all levels of your being, physically, emotionally, mentally, and energetically. And because we're kind of honing in on this energetic aspect of a relationship, well, for me, the way I see kind of a healthy self-relationship as a foundation for relating to the other, whether that's your partner, your children, your parents, is very much that you were gathered together and you are all of one piece within yourself. You understand that you and yourself are a totality, and you have a capacity to draw upon yourself, your own resources.
Mm-hmm.
And your major, the major resource that underlies your well-being is your self-love.
Right.
So that's a self-love that's operating in the way your attitude to your body, the way you even experience and process your own feelings. You have enough self-love that you can actually honor yourself however you are, and that self-love is also creating a very clear boundary around you. Because the more self-love is operating, and I'm not talking about love in a kind of wishy-washy way, I'm talking about it as a frequency, a real energetic frequency that we can harness through our hearts,
Mm-hmm.
And when this is operating through you and it's expanding through you, it's also creating like a very clear energetic boundary where your attitude to yourself is, I am a sacred temple. This is a space of self-honor. And anything that's falling short of love, respect, kindness, recognition, actually doesn't have any purpose or invitation to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that clear boundary and that self-love also creates incredible foundation of groundedness. Okay, so whoever you're with, however close you are to them, you've got this energetic foundation of you, which is your starting point. And then as you're in a relationship, well, the ideal is that you're very clear about what's your personal energy, and what's the energy that's meant to be staying with you, in your energy field,
Mm-hmm.
and what's the energy you're meant to be sharing. So in this ideal setup, the energy you're meant to be sharing is your love, your compassion, your understanding, your communication. There's a space between you and the other person where all this alchemy happens.
Mm-hmm.
When you begin to share your honesty, your understanding, all of these things, but it's coming from quite a pure place. There's no entanglement there.
Right.
Okay, because you've managed to distinguish between the energy of your love and the energy of your personal being. And those are actually two quite different things, and the confusion comes when we confuse the parts of ourselves that we are meant to be the parts of us that are meant to be exchanging energy with the other.
Right. That's a very nice visual image, and starting out with that recognition of ourselves as sacred beings um, uh, puts a frame on that in terms of being able to look at every way that we're looking at ourselves and what kind of energy we're bringing to ourselves, and are we really treating our own being as sacred. And of course, as you're saying, it's through that connection with ourselves and that recognition that we can recognize the sacredness in others. And so that there's that, on one level, a separateness, but there's a possibility of very deep, loving and caring connection.
Yes, exactly. And it's actually the basis, you know, that is the foundation for compassionately connecting to the other.
Right, right.
Because when we can compassionately connect to our imperfections, our difficulties, our wounds, all the different emotions that come through us at any point, then we can also hold that loving space for the other in their process, you know, their life process,
Mm,
which is very, very special.
mm. Now, in your experience in working with, well, with yourself and working with others, what are some of the most common dysfunctional relationship patterns
Okay.
that you notice appearing over and over again?
So again, I'm going to be really simple about this because these are just energy patterns that you can relate to in a really visual way. Because that's how I see it. It's super simple. You know, people have been thinking about, you know, I have these clients come in, they've been thinking about what's wrong with their relationship for years, but then they see the visual and they're like, oh, it's child's play. So I really want to keep on that humorous and simple level,
Right.
because that's fun and it's empowering as well. So so one of the big themes I see is when we begin to entangle energetically. Okay, so what it means is that this personal energy, not our love energy, but the energy that's really belongs to us, our sexual energy, our emotional energy, you know, the energy that we have for our willpower to live and to create, etc. You know, this really personal energy that we need to be quite intact if we're going to reach our full potential and really have the power to create the life we're here to create. This can become actually entangled with the other person. So, so for example, let's say you start a relationship and it's very powerful sexually. You know, you have this really strong sexual connection with someone. Well, before you know it, your sexual energy has started leaking out, as it were. It's like made an octopus tentacle,
Mm,
and it's kind of buried itself in the energy field of the other person. And perhaps they've done the same thing to you. So suddenly you're energetically entangled. Um, and it's as if your energy has become displaced. And sometimes that comes because on a very deep level we feel, you know, sexually disempowered, or that we don't have what we need. And so it's actually an attempt to get something we need from the other person energetically.
mm,
You know, and this really correlates with the feeling of, you know, I'm looking for love, I'm empty without this love, and you know, all these toxic romantic projections you have in the movies, and I can't live without you, and all this, you know. So all of these really show up in our society as belief systems as well, around not being complete without the other. And so it's that
so
underlying belief which causes you very easily to displace your energy into the other in an attempt to grab that energy for yourself.
right. Right. So this is an energetic level of what's talked about in terms of codependency patterns and this kind of thing, and why that becomes such an energetic loss for the individual.
Exactly. So you can actually, you know, reframe codependency as these kind of vampiric connections between people, where they're literally sucking the energy out of each other.
Mm, mm, mm.
And it's really happening in a very real way. But what this also leads to is this kind of compulsion, obsession, jealousy, insecurity. It's a very painful place to be in when
Right.
you're displaced in this way.
Mm.
You know, this is where you also get the partners who can't be apart. But you know, there's a terrible insecurity that comes with being displaced. And having this mutual kind of a vampiric action going on between you. It's very ungrounding. So the solution there is to actually consciously to decide to disentangle. So maybe we'll come to that later, but I'll come to some more patterns that I see.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'd love that if you would
Yeah.
mention more of the patterns, and then to actually take it into, well, okay, what do we do about that?
What do we do with them? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So another pattern which is slightly related to this is it's kind of like it's quite a maternal pattern. So you can actually see this often in partnerships as well, where there's a lot of programming and confusion around what a woman is and what a man is. And perhaps where, for example, where the man hasn't quite stepped up into being a man and he's holding some boy imprints, and the woman has unconsciously gone into mother mode. So I'm sure you might have seen that in your years of
In my 50 years of work
in your
here,
50
believe me,
years of work.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's just an example, because obviously that you can have a man parenting a woman as well in a relationship. So I'm only giving this as one side of the equation. But what I see happening energetically when you have this kind of mothering energy, which is kind of swamping this guy, so you've got this woman who's kind of swamping this guy energetically. What's happening is that her energy is leaking out. A lot of her personal energy, which should be there for creativity, for sexuality, for her to be really being a woman, a real woman, is leaking out of her, and it's kind of being taken by this other person. And what's happening is that they're being disempowered by the very fact that they're actually being provided with energy that's not theirs.
Mm, mm,
So there's this kind of energetic spoon feeding,
mm-hmm.
which shows up as, doing everything for the guy, making all the decisions for him, mothering him emotionally, but obviously underneath that there's a deep dissatisfaction at the fact that it's not an equal relationship.
Right, right.
But it's this kind of leakage, and in the woman it causes exhaustion and burnout energetically,
Makes sense. Yeah.
because that kind of leaking out is also not really allowing his loving energy to come to her. It's a very unidirectional pattern.
Mm-hmm.
It's this huge energy leak.
Mm-hmm.
But actually it's also quite invasive. You're kind of invading the guy's energy space. You're sensing that the other one's empty.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another important, it's like you're sensing that the other person is energetically empty, and so you're kind of pouring your energy into the empty space
Mm-hmm.
that you perceive.
Yeah.
Okay, so the man who's
Especially,
still a boy is empty on some level.
yeah, especially early in the relationship, this feels wonderful to both people.
Yes,
Like, oh,
exactly.
I finally found.
Found the person who filled that gap in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I found the person I want to look after, or unconsciously I'm taking that role that unconsciously I'm wanting to take or needing to take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's this jigsaw piece. It's like two jigsaw pieces. One is empty and one is overly full of energy, and so one is leaking the other. Not very sustainable. It's not
Right.
it's not good.
Right.
So there's another pattern which is really important, which is the victim perpetrator pattern. So this can go either way. And what I notice about people who hold deep victim patterns, so that might be through abuse or trauma, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I know about this because I was a victim of childhood abuse. So my boundaries were not clear at all for a very long time. It took me a long time to figure that one out. You have these victims who have collapsed energy systems, collapsed boundaries, and that collapse is allowing in the energy of the perpetrator or the abuser.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So again, it's a bit like the one of you is empty and the other one's full, but there is a different behavioral paradigm with it. So you've got someone who's kind of just saying, you can just come right into my core and do what you want, because I don't have any energy available to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be happening on a deep sexual level. It might be happening at emotional level. It might be very unconscious. And so, when you hear someone of either sex saying, God, I keep, attracting abusive relationships, whether it's physical or verbal or emotional, well the fact is that their energy pattern is collapsed. Their boundary is collapsed, and they're literally allowing that in. And it might be quite specific. So energetically, the way that their boundary has collapsed has a very specific shape, as it were, because relating to the original trauma they experienced. And so they very specifically keep attracting the same energetic projection into them until they learn to transform it. So again, this is a very unbalanced relationship pattern. And then obviously you've got the perpetrator, the one who's projecting his trauma outwards. You know, so his energy system is constantly invading the space of others. It's really in an attempt to resolve his own trauma. That's the underlying pattern. But he's projecting all of his trauma out onto other people, whether it's violently or through emotional abuse or manipulation. And so the victim and the perpetrator lock in with each other because one of them is like concave and collapsed and the other one is convex and
right
overly outwards. So it's really important to address, and you might have both patterns going on at once, you know, that's possible as well. But I would say that these are some of the most common patterns that need to be addressed energetically to bring a relationship into balance.
Right. Now, when you say both patterns at the same time, and I have a sense about what you're talking about, say a little bit more about how that might happen, because that may be a little confusing to some of the viewers.
Yeah. So people deal with their traumas in different ways, obviously, and it's really weird, but I have seen victim/perpetrator patterns where you have, let's say you have a woman who's got an abusive partner. She's been attracting that kind of guy all of her life, and so she's got this energy that's allowing the abuse in. But at the same time, and maybe his abuse is maybe it's on a sexual level or it's on a physical level, but at the same time, because of all her anger and rage, she's extremely verbally abusive towards him. So they are, you know, for example, so there's actually both things going on at once.
Right.
And that's obviously very common because most perpetrators are in fact victims, as we know.
Right, and I've seen that that pattern where it because both of those, and thinking about it in terms of shape kind of makes it a little simpler, that both of those are in that one person and both in the other, and it kind of depends on what they're presented to some degree. If they're presented a certain aspect from the other, then what's going to get projected is something quite different. Or if they're in a different relationship, they may, the other one is big time perpetrator. And so it brings out your big time victim. In another relationship, it may be just a little bit. But I like being able to use that sense about shapes and how they can exist in individual different patterns and called out at different times, because the shape kind of says, okay, I've got a space for you, come on out.
Exactly. Yeah, it is very helpful, and it's so childlike, you know, to see it like that. That it's a really great way of also deciding how you're going to step away from it, because, you know, the solution is that you decide to step out of the pattern energetically. So you gather your power, and you take power over your personal energy, and you start making clear intentions and decisions about what shape you want to be.
Okay, so yeah, let's now launch more into that. What can individuals do about that once they begin to recognize that this is applying to them in some ways?
So let's say we're talking about the entanglement, which is a real classic. You know, when you're sending out your octopus feeler and you're plugging into this person and you're sucking at them, and that could be happening from all sorts of different parts of your body. Well, what I get my clients to do is I get them to stand up, and I get them to invite the other person in front of them. So not physically, just imagine or see that person, or really invite them energetically into the room. And I invite my clients, without overthinking it, without getting too complicated, to actually just say, where is it that you feel your energy is actually coming out of you and plugging in? And because I can double check this intuitively, because I can see the energy, I'm always amazed by the utter accuracy my clients have.
Mm-hmm.
And I get them to use their hands. I'm like, use your hands to do the thinking. Get your hands and actually start identifying where this sucker is and actually just pull it out. Just decide, that's it. I'm pulling it out and I'm bringing that energy back to me. You know, so however many of these bonds or cords there are, you literally pull the energy back to center, and you're holding this clear intention. I'm going to release this other person from these codependent bonds I've got on them, and I'm going to pull them back to myself. And it's extremely powerful.
Mm.
It instantly shifts thinking patterns, emotional patterns, all sorts of things that are going on, because you've literally brought yourself back to center. And then obviously you do the same. You kind of have the other person in front of you and you say, look, is it okay if we unplug from each other? You know, if you unplug from me, you know, because I'd like you to do that. And then with your own hands, you see, where are they plugged into me? And you're like, pull it out. And you send that back to them.
Mm. Mm.
And so what's fascinating is that you can do that with a partner, but you can also do that with a parent, you know. So for example, I did this work with my mother when I was in my 30s, and I realized she was completely hooked into me. This is very common, you know, that mothers don't let go of their children fully,
Right,
you know.
right.
So, and it really shifted our relationship. I've done it on numerous occasions in my relationships and found that it's just created a lot more respect and space in the relationship, a lot more peace and calm as well.
Mm.
So that's really essentially what you do. You just pull your energy back to center. You unplug. You unplug. And if you've got a very conscious couple where both people in that relationship want to do that work, obviously you can hold that session for a couple where they're both physically present and they're both doing the work. But if you're in a relationship where you're the only one who's wanting to work in this way, then you, as I said, you just invite that person in energetically to come and do the work with you. And it is just as powerful. It creates huge shifts.
Mm. So you're doing this both on a deep visual way and also physically in a way where you're actually creating movement that is working with those particular patterns of energy.
That's right, because the energy is also physical.
Mm.
And when you're working physically, you're just connecting to the very real energy that's there. And you know, I have clients who are literally, it's an effort to pull it back. They're really feeling, they're using their muscles, you know, because they're really feeling the energy of this thing that they're
Right.
pulling back into themselves.
Yeah.
It's not grasping the air, you know, they are not grasping air, they are grasping their own energy, and it's a very different thing.
Mm. Yeah. You get a real sense of in a unhealthy way how into this other person I really am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
But I want to stress that you know, because we don't have a healthy programming culturally about relationships, this is pretty universal.
right.
Almost everybody gets entangled because they haven't been taught how to consciously hold themselves energetically in a relationship.
Mm. That's true. That's true.
It's kind of the default setting, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a passing blindness down. So, what about some of the other patterns? Could you say a little bit more about that?
So, for example, let's say like this leaking pattern where you're being maternal, and obviously this can also happen if you're being paternal to your partner as well.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways that you do that is you actually kind of have to clear the agreement that you've made with yourself and the other person, that you're going to inappropriately provide these energies to them. So if you're a woman who's mothering a man, you kind of have to get clear with yourself that I'm no longer doing this. I'm no longer providing this energy and attention to this person, and I'm actually creating and initiating to hold a space for them to step up and become a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a conscious decision. And sometimes that has to be reinforced with behavior, right? So when you're stuck in this pattern, sometimes you're doing things for the other person that it is not appropriate to be doing. You know, are you washing up for them and cooking for them all? Are you mending their clothes? You know, whatever it is, you have to actually consciously make a decision to draw back your energy from behaviors that are inappropriate, which relate more to mothering than to partnership. Okay.
Right.
And to get clear with yourself what that is, because that could be different for everyone. You know, there's no hard and fast rules here, but I think it's important to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you do is what you need to do is you need to actually really what's the energetic way with this exactly, to make it simple? You actually pull it all back. So all that energy that's been leaking out, you just start pulling it back. And it will often come from quite a specific part of your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I often notice that specific part of the body, that person will have some kind of illness or pain or tension
Interesting. Yeah.
going on, you know.
Right.
And you literally, like, you just pull it back, and it's something that has to be done very lovingly, because you're acknowledging that the other person still has an energy gap in their life where they're not fully stepping up into their completeness. But you're very lovingly deciding that for your highest good and for their highest good, it's more appropriate for you to simply hold a space for them so they have the opportunity to grow.
Now, do you encourage, when you're working with couples, that, or maybe it's only one person of the couple, but encourage that they also verbally communicate to the other person something about the process of their pulling back and what that's about, that it is still coming from love rather than from, I'm going to make you pay now?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's, when we're doing these energetic processes, you know, the root of the work is intention and self-responsibility. So it's you owning that you've been over-mothering or over-fathering this person.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And not transferring blame onto them for that. And this is a very important step, because often this pattern leads to resentment in the end.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, I'm doing everything, you're not doing anything, you're not stepping up financially, whatever it is, you know.
Right. Then the attack comes out. Yeah.
Then then the perpetrators, you know, in full flow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to mention one thing, and I know that you counsel along these lines, but just for the viewers that like talking about the mothering and everything, for simplicity, expressed in terms of the woman over mothering and this kind of thing. But believe me, there's a lot of mothering that a man can end up doing, and we do it all the time. We're just because we're predominantly male or female doesn't mean we're not going to be in that mothering role or that fathering role, sometimes in a healthy way, but oftentimes really just projecting some stuff from our own past into the relationship that has more to do with issues of our own mothering, and then we become that kind of mother with another person.
I agree. And I think also over-mothering, or as you correctly say, this over-fathering, because it's not gender specific at all, you know.
Right.
Often it's often a shield, because when you're over-parenting someone who is not appropriate to parent, and this is the same thing with healers as well, who want to be seen as assisting and healing. You're essentially hiding your own wounds, because once you're in the position of the mother, the father, the healer, whatever it is, you're actually disguising yourself behind a role.
Right.
And you're actually consciously or unconsciously choosing someone who needs to be cared for, and they're probably someone who won't be able to detect what your wounds are.
Right.
Who won't have that penetrative gaze on who you are, because it's unequal.
Right. Yeah.
So it's also a taking responsibility that perhaps you've been hiding behind that energy pattern because it felt threatening to be with someone who's your equal for some reason.
Yeah, I think that those elements of responsibility and intention are so crucial in this whole process, and really all relationship processes. And wow, I'm aware of the time, Diana, and it has been flying by, and we could go on and on. I have a bunch of questions I could definitely continue with, as I'm sure the audience has. But because of the time, we are going to need to be wrapping up shortly. And I definitely want to give you time to be able to share the gift that you are going to be offering to the audience, if you would do that now.
Thank you, Alan. So the gift I'd love to offer you is called the Self-Love Miracle, and it's a 3-part video series. And each video is accompanied with an audio, which is actually a space to do a powerful energy practice of your own.
Mm,
And part 1 is about the body. It's how you bring the energy of unconditional love into your body, which is very important because so many of us are trapped in self-judgment and rejection at a physical level of ourselves. And so this is about healing that and bringing the very real energy of love into every part of us and dropping the judgment. It's very powerful, very beautiful.
mm, mm,
And the second part is bringing self-love into our emotional processes. So when we're feeling the difficult emotions particularly, how is it that we can hold a space of unconditional love for ourselves so that we feel safe to actually feel and release and transform our own feelings?
mm, mm,
And the third part is about self-love in our relationships. And it's actually about creating the clear boundaries, the energetic boundaries around ourselves that enables us to release any relationship energies that are no longer for our highest good and actually attract and draw in the loving relationship energies that we're looking to experience.
mm,
So
mm.
that's a very powerful one as well.
Wow. What a wonderful gift. I appreciate you offering that so much.
Right. Well, I made it with so much love because it was one of the most powerful things and insights that came into my life. And it was one of the most transformative things that happened for me was to discover that self-love energy and how it shifts everything.
Mm.
And so that was naturally what I just wanted to share with the world.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'll definitely want to take a look and experience that myself. Uh, and I want to encourage the audience. Don't hesitate on this. This sounds like a wonderful opportunity and a beautiful gift. So you're going to see a link on your screen, and this link actually will give you access to Diana's gift. All you need to do is click on that and put in your first name and your email, and click on that link, and you'll be connected and have access to that beautiful gift. So thank you again so much, Diana. I appreciate you being with us today, and I appreciate so much what you've shared and what you're doing in your part of the planet. I really bless you as you continue to do this wonderful work. And I can feel, how you come from your heart, and I'm so happy that you're here doing this work on the planet.
Well, thank you so much, Ellen. I'm also really happy about the work you're doing, and it's been a very powerful and beautiful encounter between us. And I really hope it's healing and enlightening for all of those who are listening. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you too. And thank you, our viewing audience, so much for joining us. And again, remember to click on that link and get that free gift. And I look forward to continuing connection with all of you. And as I sign off, again, I'm Alan Darbon, and as I often do, I just want to remind each one of you, and this is from my heart, to remember that your particular way of loving and your particular light is what we need on the planet. We can't actually be whole without you. So please just find your kindness and speak your truth. We all need that so much. And again, thank you for being part of the series. Bye-bye for now.